Welcome, everyone. This is Lisa Edinburgh coming to you live for the last time as the chair of the Westborough School Committee. Today is Wednesday, March 1st, 2023. This meeting of the Westborough School Committee is called to order. Please stand if you are able for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for joining us this evening. I'd like to notify everyone in the room with us tonight that this meeting is being recorded and live streamed by Westborough TV. School committee meetings are available for remote viewing or listening on Westborough TV's government channels, Verizon 28 and Charter 192, and online on the Westborough TV YouTube channel. Thank you to Westborough TV for covering the broadcast this evening. We have with us tonight Superintendent Amber Bach, Assistant Superintendent Dr. Danielle Mayer, our Director of Finance and Administration, David Gordon, will be right down soon, Vice Chair of the Westborough School Committee, Steve Durrett, School Committee members, Kristen Vincent, Raghu Nandan, Stephen Batchelor, our Student Representative, Aratrika Ghosh. Our recording secretary, Jen Benton, will be with us very soon. She's driving in. We have staff from Westborough TV here, and I'd like to personally welcome everyone sitting in front of us and those watching from home. Our agenda for this meeting is as follows. We will not begin with approval of minutes from the February 15th, 2023 regular session meeting. This approval of minutes will be placed on the March 15th meeting agenda, as our recording secretary, Jen Benton, was away during that last meeting. But we will begin with hearing from Amber Bach with the superintendent's report, followed by the assistant superintendent's report. Then we'll hear from the Director of Finance and Administration, continuing the meeting with the school committee member reports, followed by the building project updates. We'll then potentially hear from some citizens during citizens' requests. Then we'll invite our guests from NRT to join us for a bus update and discussion, followed by the strategic plan update. We'll continue with a budget town meeting update, potentially. And soon thereafter, we'll receive an update on the emergency shelter. Then we're going to move into executive session meeting and finally adjourn for this evening. So we'll begin with the superintendent's report. Amber, take it away.
Thank you very much. I like the flair of your transitions lately. They've become more vibrant. Take it away. Thank you very much. It's good to see all of you. I hope you got a little bit of downtime. I try not to email and text you during vacation week, and hope you got some rest. There's always kind of a flow of information that you have to be aware of, and I appreciate that on vacation week. I hope you get to step away a bit. The return from vacation has gone very smoothly. We got back on Monday, except for my no snow day. Aratrika, you so owe me that you got a senior snow day when there was no snow that we needed to stay home for. So I don't miss a call very often. Just want to be on record for letting everyone know that I was cursing myself at 5 in the morning when I felt like we could have been here. But I do believe that it was a tough one to call. And I think, better to be safe. I'm glad we did that. And I appreciate I know people are supportive of how complex it is to try to, get those plans in place. I am reverting back to my 4:30 in the morning process, though. No more of these night calls. I gotta get up. So I just want to say, though, it was good to see the return today and people got right back into rhythm. I think what's very nice is between the snow day and between vacation, people look very rested. So both students and teachers have looked very, very well rested when I was visiting. And actually, they do start to look tired this time of year. It's a hard job. It's tiring. And so it feels really good to come back from vacation and just feel like people look rested, they look relaxed. And so that has definitely been true. We continue to move forward to complete negotiations with all of our various units, and I know many of you, all of you, are serving on those negotiation teams. I just want to acknowledge the strong partnership that we've been able to share with all of our units and the good work that's been done. It takes a tremendous amount of time and energy and personal connection to sit at the table with people that are colleagues that you know and to negotiate. And I just want to thank all of you. We are near completion on all of our units, and they have documents that they are carrying forward to final votes in the next couple of weeks. I think we will talk about the detail of some of those tonight in executive session, but I just want to acknowledge on public record that the time and energy that everybody puts into coming into negotiations and the collaboration is one of the pieces that I think makes Westborough a unique and professional and enjoyable place to work. And I want to thank all of you, as well as all the members of our negotiation teams on the Westborough colleague list. I also want to acknowledge, just another note, that Armstrong's new playground equipment has been delivered. It's actually stored in the inner courtyard area, wrapped and waiting for installation. And when we hit a series of 50-degree days, they'll move to do the installation for the major play equipment, and then be able to go ahead and transition toward doing the soft play surface after it warms up. I don't imagine they will do that until probably April break. I've asked them not to leave, I don't want a long window between the installation of the play equipment and the installation of this play surface, because while we will leave it cordoned off with tape, on the weekends, what we know, and we experience this at Fails, is that people come on site, it's very appealing looking, and they are going to want to play on that equipment. It's just, it means that the surface, if you fall, is not safety ready with mulch or the safety play surface. So we're kind of working on the window of trying to get things done as soon as possible. I would rather defer that they leave the equipment packed and set until they can get the two of those as close as possible. Part of that is just figuring out the installation window that people have available, because the playground people, they get very busy as they come into their spring season. They've got this window and they're just hustling to get as many done as possible. So we will be in their cycle, but I look forward to updating you on when that is accomplished. It's a huge improvement over there. And given that we opened Fails, one of our commitments is to continue to rotate through and make sure that the care and quality and level of building quality for all of our buildings continues to get the maintenance care and lift needed, so that there's an equity of experience. So I think it's very good news to see the work. Once it's all done, I'll have you guys go, I'll have you go over and look at it, or I'll do a slideshow presentation for you. You can go swing on the swings. So I'm very pleased about that. Not too much else to update in terms of school-based work because it was vacation. I think our Trika, are you not report on our sports teams and stuff? Do you have that on your list? Okay, so I'll let you carry the fun news. That's good. I want to finish my report tonight by acknowledging that tonight is the formal close for Raghu and Lisa in their service of time here on school committee. And I just want to thank you immensely for the quality of service and time that you have brought to the position. I want to just note that I don't think anyone realizes quite what they're getting into when they come onto a board, and the amount of work that it takes to be an active, engaged member of a school committee is really busy. And I want to acknowledge that you both really brought the energy necessary to do good work, and to serve on subcommittees, to come prepared to meetings, to participate in keeping our district moving forward effectively. It's been a joy to work with both of you. I want to acknowledge that, we don't always agree. We have areas where we struggle, but what I respect is that we've always worked in collaboration to serve the district at a high level. And I think that that's what good work looks like. I want to also acknowledge out loud that you probably didn't think you'd deal with a pandemic. And I feel like we're in the phase where we're actually trying not to mention the pandemic as much as we all trying to put pieces of that emotional trauma in our rearview mirror. But to serve on a school committee during a pandemic, I don't think there would be any harder board to be on other than maybe a hospital board. It was a very complex challenge, and your partnership in helping us do that work has been really amazing. And I just want to thank you both. And the rest of you are stuck here for a while, so you have to continue your service. I also want to note that you get a gift. It's a small token. I am trying to stay here long enough to get one of these, so this is, you always have to give gifts you want.
Yes, that's what you
I'm
do.
giving you both gifts I wish I had. I don't have one of these, I'm waiting to earn it. So congratulations to both of you, and I will be calling on you anyway to work.
I too have always wanted this gift. So thank you.
Yeah, we have several traditions here. One of our traditions is around the celebration of our retirees and our benchmark of service in the district. So the coveted 10-year blanket is definitely the gift of choice. And since I won't have been here until 10 years next year, I'm definitely going to get a blanket next year. So really good to have the opportunity to celebrate that with you. And at this point then, I've got a lot of updates that come in other parts of the meeting, so I'll turn it back to you.
Okay, thank you very much. And I also want to thank the town for the funding of the Armstrong Playground. It's very exciting to see it close to fruition. It's going to be just amazing. So thank you. We'll move on to the Assistant Superintendent report. Daniel, what do you have for us this evening?
I have nothing to report tonight.
Okay. I do not see Dave Gordon yet, so we may come back to him should he appear. And so,
Yeah, he's in the other, doesn't have any specialized report during his
Okay.
open segment, but he'll be down.
okay. So we'll move right along to the school committee reports, and we'll begin with our student liaison, Aratrika Ghosh. Can you speak into the
I don't know,
microphone?
is your
I'm not sure
mic
it's
on?
There you go.
Is it working now?
There you
Okay.
go.
So I just have a couple small updates today. Course selections just started at the high school, so be on the lookout for that, whether that be teacher recommendations or managing your own schedule. Seniors, you don't have to deal with that. That's super fun. What seniors do have to deal with is that the senior ball is set for May 30th, and student council has been sending out information periodically, so please be on the Instagram or the emails for that. Something exciting I wanted to share is that several high school students and members of the Westborough community took part in an event called A Night in the Cold, and that event was able to raise $20,000 for the homeless community in the Worcester County. It was an amazing effort, and students were even able to kind of learn about how hard it is to spend time on the streets in Worcester in the cold during this time, and it was a really successful fundraiser. Last but not least, I want to congratulate the boys hockey team for their big win in the CDMA championships. And I also want to congratulate Alan Nugent for placing All-State honors in 2 events at the annual All-State Indoor Track and Field Championships.
And the hockey team is playing tonight, so we send them luck. They've been playing really well, as has our girls' basketball team. Just want to give a shout out. I caught some of their tournament over vacation. I caught one of the games where they didn't win, but they came back and really dominated the next game. So it's been fun to see what's going on with winter sports.
Okay, so we'll move right along. Steve Batchelor?
Thank you. I have an announcement to make that on March 6th at 6 p.m. at Hastings School, the Westborough LPAC, which stands for English Learners Parent Advisory Council, will be having a meeting. The new ELL director, Letitia Broomfield, was here at our last meeting announcing it, and so I just wanted to follow up. There will also be a CPAC presence there as well. So March 6th, 6 p.m. for English learners at Hastings. And then I also wanted to just express a note of gratitude to the 2 outgoing members. I've only not even fully been here a year. It's been a real pleasure to learn, to work beside you and learn from both of you. It is a lot of work. And so I can't really even imagine the level of work that the 2 of you have put in your time here, because I'm already feeling not overwhelmed, but certainly that, there's a fair amount of work to be done here. So I really appreciate all the work and all the training that you've provided for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, Kristen Vincent?
Yep, I just want to say thank you to both of you for your service in Westborough. It's going to be hard to imagine this school committee without you because we've been so fortunate that you stepped up repeatedly to hold this position. And so thank you for your service, your leadership. I really appreciate it. And we'll be calling you now that you're not on school committee for other roles and jobs.
Well, thank you. Raghu Nandan?
Yes, I'd like to take this opportunity to go through some of the thoughts that I have. It may take a while.
Absolutely. That's okay.
So thank you, Westborough Committee, for providing me with an opportunity to serve you on the school committee for past 4+ years. In this role, I've learned a lot, and I want to thank other members of this committee and the school administration and staff for providing support that's needed throughout these 4+ years for me to learn and experience this in this role. From my experience on the school committee, I can say with confidence that school administration, teachers, and staff are very dedicated and committed to providing highest quality of education possible to our kids. We are very fortunate to have such dedicated people in our school system. However, there are few worries I need to share with you all. We have several large investments that are coming down the pike to keep our schools, especially on the infrastructure side, in great shape. For example, high school roof replacement project. I urge the town administration and planners to consider ways to attract more businesses into our town so as to raise the business tax base. Library experience has shown us that there's not much of an appetite for large residential tax increase within our community. We need to think outside the box. Let me share my own 3-point plan, for whatever it's worth, to perhaps help with this issue. We are at the most ideal location in the Commonwealth, apart from Kendall Square, perhaps, and Route 128 corridor. There's no reason, being at the intersection of Interstate 90, 495, and Route 9, our location should not be more desirable for businesses to move in. My 3-point plan of action just a suggestion is this. Point 1, let's facilitate building a sports bar, happy restaurants, bars, movie theaters, bowling alleys, all alongside each other, unlike spread out on Route 9 where you have to go 1.5 miles between each place. Such facility will attract young population, including recent college grads, to consider Westborough. Availability of young people, including recent college grads, is absolutely essential for any company who would plan to move into Westborough. Let's create something like the one that's there on Route 20 in Marlborough. That's point 1. Point 2, provide incentives to companies to move into Westborough. We should not think increasing business tax. Rather, we should be thinking about increasing business tax base. We need to attract biotech, manufacturing, healthcare, and high-tech companies. If we can focus 1 or 2 of these, that's fine too. But let's create some incentives and some incubators. Point 3, we need to think outside the box to increase the occupancy of those properties which have been empty for years, including some in Commons and on Route 9. Innovative thinking and perhaps zoning, rezoning, if necessary, will bring occupants into these empty spaces and increase tax revenue for our town. Hopefully, with an increase in business tax base and prudent spending, we should be in great position fiscally to not only keep making the needed infrastructure investments into our schools, but maybe have some money left for other investments that would make our school system much more desirable. Remember, a great school system is the cornerstone for a great community. In the end, I wish you all the best, and I know our school system is in great hands. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Raghu.
Thank you. Steve, you want to wait until your building report?
Yes.
Okay. So I just have a couple of announcements. Just a reminder that the local town election is March 14th from 8 to 8 p.m. at the high school. March 25th is the town meeting. Babysitting services will be provided. The town meeting begins at 9 a.m. and start until the town meeting decides to adjourn or until it's done. And then I also want to mention that the 44th Pancake Breakfast is at the Knights of Columbus on March 5th, and it's from 7 to 1. And you can buy tickets from Scouts that are selling all around town.
You also have candidates night on Sunday.
That's
And I
right, March
believe-
5th.
And I believe at the time, I think we're going to, somebody was asking me, us about time and location, and I know that it's being done via Zoom. So I'm just wanting some information on how they're going to push that link. I would assume it's at Westborough TV, but anyway, we'll get some, if you don't have an update, that's,
It's live streamed from 6 to 8 p.m. on March 5th.
thank you.
And although the meeting itself is on Zoom for all the candidates, the
Okay.
local election. Yep. Thank you for a reminder.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, and then I also have a little thing, a few things to say, since this is the last. It is with mixed emotions that I sit before you today and bid farewell to the school committee after serving for 6 years. These past few years have been unlike any other as we navigated the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic. We adapted quickly to new and ever-changing circumstances. I believe we did so with grace, professionalism, and perseverance. I would like to express my gratitude to my colleagues on the school committee for their unwavering dedication and commitment to our community's children. It has been an honor to work alongside such a dedicated group of individuals who have the best interests of our students at heart. Specifically, and in seniority order, Steve Durrett. Without your modeling of get to the bottom line thinking, our meetings would be hours longer. Additionally, your unwavering 13-year commitment to the plethora of building projects, school budgets, town meeting presentations is unparalleled. I have been privileged to watch you in action and learn from the best. Kristen, I cannot imagine what the last 5 years would have been without you alongside for this incredibly rewarding yet rocky ride. Your guidance, tremendous and talented skill sets and leadership have been invaluable to me as a school committee member. And your mentorship to me this past year as chair of the school committee saved our district from a fallen leader, as surely I would have been without you. You've made me a better school committee member through and through. Your friendship means the world to me. Raghu, thank you for stepping up when we needed you most, and I hope you can look back on your 4 years on the committee with pride. And Steve Batchelor, thank you for filling a tremendous gap with the issues the rest of the committee could not fill well. I've learned so much from your perspective, from our conversations. You're off to a great start. And a special thank you to Nicole Sullivan, who inspired me to run for school committee after graciously accepting an informational interview with me back in the winter of 2016. Within the committee, I must also thank Sarah Dulé, whose leadership and committee camaraderie made challenging times bearable and good times rewarding. And thank you to Jen Benton for recording our meetings. We've been fortunate from your skills. I would also like to thank the district's leadership team, the teachers and all support staff for their unwavering commitment to our students during these challenging times and beyond. You continue to amaze me with your innovation, strategic vision, and actions. They are nothing short of inspiring. Daniel Mayer, Dave Gordon, Tammy Costello, Sherry Stevens, Kim Tynan, John Green. The honor has been mine to watch you all in action and have students and teachers reap the benefits of your labor. And Amber, it has been a pleasure to work with you, observe and learn the ins and outs of your leadership. The learning curve was steep at first until we discovered our similarities that sometimes clashed, and the after effect was a deeper connection. You are the epitome of the superintendent's best in the business. I don't believe Westborough knows just how fortunate they are, or have been, from your talent and expertise. As a witness to this genius, you made my job sometimes challenging and other times simple. Our push and pull mechanisms that are the foundation of a superintendent-school committee relationship, I am forever grateful that you continue to work forming our connection. Perhaps we can now be friends, a relationship that just isn't quite possible with the dynamics of our roles. To the families and students, I want to thank you for your patience, understanding, and partnership. We could not have navigated my 6 years of challenging times without your support and trust. I will miss the camaraderie, the sense of purpose, and the passion that I experienced during my time here. I'll even miss some of my subcommittees, such as Labor Board, the Transportation Committee, and Finance Team. The work has allowed me to grow personally, professionally, and made me a more patient, diplomatic human being and leader. Aspects I've always aspired to be and have. As I prepare to step down from the school committee, I do so with a deep sense of gratitude and appreciation for all that we have accomplished and achieved together. I have no doubt that this school district will continue to thrive and achieve great things under your leadership. Again, I thank you all. I wish you all the best of luck in the future. I am excited to embark on a new journey, to explore new opportunities and create new experiences. I am leaving, but certainly this is not a goodbye, but a see you soon, just not on Wednesday nights. Never hesitate to reach out. I am here for you. And on a side note, I won't say which half of this farewell speech was written with the help of AI, artificial intelligence. I mention this because I believe it is something our district will need to grapple with now and in the near future. So we'll move right along to our building update. Steve Durrett.
Well, before I do that, I do want to thank you both for your service here. I guess a correction to your discussion. I started this in 2004, so it's been 19 years. And you know, many people have come on the school committee during my term, and each one of them has created a part of the school committee in terms of how we deal with all the problems before us in the town. I thank you both for your services as you have been here, and look forward to the built friendship that we have created on the committee, working on the various subcommittees, as well as dealing with problems in the town. So it's, you know, our vision isn't just the school committee, it's the town as a whole and how we fit in with you know, the organization of the town, and good times and in bad. And Amber brought up some of the bad, but there have been some very good times as well. Raghu has brought up some of the concerns that we have in terms of the fiscal problems that we have right now, and the ability of the town itself on behalf of the administration to maintain the 6 buildings that are within our charge. And as a result of all of these things, it is a wonderful opportunity for those people who have the patience to be here on Wednesday nights and many other days and hours on subcommittees as well. I really do hope that everything in your future is what you want it to be. Certainly, we will miss you all as well as members of the school committee. So I thank you very much.
Thank you.
And so with that, get to what's always been important in my mind, which is looking at the bells and whistles of projects, including the Fail School, which, as I think you all know, is now complete. The occupancy date for Phase 2 was established, at least in my mind anyway, is February the 6th, when the geothermal system went online, and it has performed well since that time. And where we stand now as a committee is working through the final process of accounting for the bells and whistles of the original design, as well as the adds and subtracts associated with that. We still do have money left in the budget that is not committed. It's not very much, but there are many things that we question and are working on between our construction manager, the owner's project manager, as well as the architect and all the other players on the job. So the current thing that's before us now is we are out to bid, as you know, for the ADA work on the Hastings School. We anticipate having that bid in hand prior to town meeting so that we can present the real number of what it would cost to do this job so that we can move forward with it and finally get the work done and put behind us. Obviously, as it was mentioned by Raghu, there are other articles on the town meeting warrant, such as roofs, actually 3 different roof projects, the high school, Hastings as well, and the Mill Pond School. And each one has a different aspect as to how we would accomplish it for the benefit of the town and the least budget impact. And so, as always, our work here continues, and we look forward to the new people that the town will elect to take the place of my 2 comrades here, so that we can continue the work to benefit the students in this town, who we all love and hope that they do well, and that the future for them is as good as we could make it while we all served here on the school committee. So thanks again.
Excellent. It's so nice that people are celebrating. Hear the cheers.
Yeah.
So we'll move right along to citizens' requests. Is there anyone here tonight that wishes to make a statement to the school committee? Because then I'll read the policy. If so, then I'll read the policy. As a reminder, some important pieces of this policy include that you must be a current resident of Westborough. Speakers are allowed to address the school committee about issues within the school committee's purview, Westborough School District policy or budget. Each speaker will be allowed up to 3 minutes to speak to the school committee. Written comments longer than 3 minutes may be presented to the presiding chair before or after the meeting. You are welcome to hand me additional comments in writing now or send them via email, and I will share them with the other school committee members. Public comment by residents at this meeting is not a discussion, debate, or dialogue between individuals and the school committee. It is an individual's opportunity to express an opinion on issues within the school committee's authority. Our role is to listen carefully to what you have to share with us tonight. Clapping, cheering, calling out, or any other noise following a speaker is not allowed. A reminder that if not following the policy, this may cut into your time. I want to remind my school committee colleagues that when making a point of order, please address your concern to the chair initially rather than to the speaker. So, are you here as a...
Excuse me, I'm not a resident of Westborough, so I...
Okay. It's
I have an interest in Westborough.
anything to do with what's going on out there is actually not a purview of the school committee. You need to recognize that? Okay. So no one can talk to us about it. It's really not within our purview. So I guess we'll move on to our next agenda item, which is the bus update and discussion. We are welcoming the NRT leadership team. We typically have an annual bus update every single year. And so we have invited some of the leadership team from NRT, which is we are contracted with for our bus transportation. So, and we have with us, just so you can, I introduce them, is Dave Lathbury, the Vice President of Operations, and Peter Delaney, is that okay? Delaney. He's the Vice President of Client Relations from Beacon Mobility. So I'm going to begin with an opening statement, and then I'm going to come back, and I hear that you have a statement as well. So even though it's not a purview as what's happening out there, I do feel like a statement is necessary from me and our committee. This evening, there was or is a picketing event in support of Westborough Public School bus drivers, and we appreciate that it was a respectful show of support and recognize the importance of our parent community wanting to show support to Westborough drivers. Westborough Public Schools wishes to clarify some of the information regarding Westborough Public Schools, NRT Bus Company, Company, and the bus drivers. First and foremost, we want to thank our drivers for their commitment and quality of professionalism they bring to their work in Westborough. As a school committee, we know the importance of how a child starts and ends the school day. The Westborough Public Schools contract with First Student ended on June 30th, 2020. As required by Massachusetts general law, Westborough Public Schools in 2019 issued a request for proposal, the RFP, for student transportation services. Based on the evaluation criteria in the RFP, Westborough Public Schools awarded a new contract to NRT effective July 1st, 2020. NRT is contracted by Westborough Public Schools to provide bus transportation services. While we are close partners, the drivers work for NRT, not Westborough Public Schools. As such, Westborough Public Schools has no role and cannot interfere or intervene in any contract negotiations between NRT and its employees. Yet, we do wish a positive outcome for our drivers, of course. NRT bus drivers recently announced publicly that NRT was not acting in good faith. Since we are not involved in those negotiations, we are unable to confirm whether this is true or not. Of course, like any vendor that contracts with Westborough Public Schools, we expect that NRT will negotiate with its employees in good faith and fairly. This comes at a time when we have concerns about whether the current level of service we are receiving is consistent with the requirements of our own contract with NRT. To be clear, those concerns are not based in any way on the performance of Westborough drivers. The purpose of having NRT in attendance this evening is to address our concerns to NRT and to state our expectation that the level of service meet the level that is set out in our contract. Westborough Public Schools takes tremendous pride in its bus and van drivers assigned to transport Westborough students. We work to actively show our appreciation and support for all that they do as members of our professional community. In signing a 5-year contract with NRT in 2020, the school department worked with NRT to make work rule changes requested by the drivers, including preference in hiring drivers previously assigned to Westborough under the prior vendor, allowing drivers to park buses at alternate lots rather than the town of Westborough lot so that bus drivers could be closer to drivers' homes, allowing drivers to have their young children ride buses, reducing the need for childcare, mandates for newer buses to create a safer operating environment, better cleaning and sanitizing schedules to protect drivers' health and well-being, and making them the highest paid drivers at the time. In addition, Westborough also held a Q&A meeting for drivers to assist them with the change in vendor. We gives drivers holiday gifts, assists NRT in recruiting drivers from our community, supports drivers in addressing any behavior or safety concerns on the buses, conducts school bus orientation and training at the elementary schools, including an emphasis on respecting bus drivers. Westborough Public Schools appreciates the professionalism of our bus and van drivers and the care taken to transport safely our students. In fact, we hear from drivers how much they love our students, and from parents and students how much they love their drivers. So we're going to come back to you, and we'll hear your statement as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Chair, the School Committee. Yeah, my name is Peter Delani, and I am the Vice President of Client Relations for NRT, and I'm joined by Dave Lathberry, who is our Vice President of Operations for the Westborough contract in the Metro West region. I'll just read a statement in a moment. I had asked the Madam Chairperson and Superintendent Bach if it was appropriate, to do so earlier today. In addition, there were 3 questions or 3 topics that we were specifically asked last week to come prepared to speak to tonight. That was, in no particular order, the athletic charters, some concerns on special education transportation, and then bus numbering, but some of the confusion it's caused by not having the buses necessarily align with the originally assigned bus. So we will certainly speak to that as we gather some information on that. Additionally, I'm happy to, but I also want to be respectful of the committee's time. I'm happy to, if it's your wish, to speak to some of our larger efforts specific to recruitment for Westborough, but also in the state, as it's a national labor shortage that's impacting, the federal, across the country, but also state and locally. So I will, discuss that at your wishes if you wish me to elaborate on that. The first thing I just would like to say is NRT is in negotiations with the Teamsters, and we continue to negotiate in good faith, and we are optimistic that we will have a contract in the near future. NRT values our relationship with Westborough and our drivers who service the Westborough community and their right to negotiate through the Teamsters. We appreciate the opportunity to be here this evening and to meet with you. Westborough is a valued partner, and we feel that, we have a great relationship with the district, despite the fact that with the labor shortages that impact transportation, we recognize that there are some challenges in the district that we work hard to try to resolve and work collaboratively with Mr. Gordon and on that. And we have our weekly check-in meetings with Westborough, and we're happy to attend this type of forum anytime you folks would wish for us to attend. What I'll do is I'll go through each of those 3 topics and just provide some of the information that we were able to ascertain. And then certainly, once I move through those 3 topics, if you have any questions or would like us to further elaborate, we would be happy to do so. Okay. So the first one, we were just asked to address some concerns relative to the athletic charters. And so first, let me just say, I know that it's, having been in education myself, that's the 3rd Monday of every spring. That is the beginning of the new, the new spring season. So we're 3 weeks away from that. And I know usually it's typically a week or so after that when the fields, after tryouts and the fields hopefully are dried, that spring sports begin as far as needing transportation to and from events. And certainly understand that there are some challenges that all communities and all school districts face relative to, they back up against like 6 p.m. youth sports on some of those fields. So I'll speak to the spring sports in just a moment, but we did want to go back and take a look at what our service record was over the course of the winter months. And so from the data, we were able to do a little diagnostics. There were 68 winter sports charters that were requested by Westborough. We completed 67 of those. Of those, 58 were completed as originally requested, meaning the time of departure that was originally requested, we were able to fulfill that. 8 were completed with alternative start times, meaning we came back and explained that we wouldn't be able to accomplish it right at, say, a 2:30 departure time, but if that could be moved back to a later time, we would be able to accommodate that. There was one swim trip on February 2nd that was combined, Westborough was combined with Algonquin, as both districts were going to the same location. And then unfortunately, there was one trip that was canceled by us on the Saturday when the weather was sub-zero temperatures and the bus wouldn't start. And I know that left the district and the athletic team in a compromised situation, which certainly we need to try to rectify that. And, I'm not trying to blame the cold weather, right? I mean, at the end of the day, we need to get that right, but that was the day. Specific to the spring like the fall, I know Superintendent Bach and I were talking about this the other day. I'm fully aware that the spring is a little bit more challenging than the winter. School districts, obviously, or athletic programs in the winter have the luxury of being able to have start times of their events, later than after school necessarily. They have more flexibility there to do so. When we get into the spring, daylight, I know daylight savings, I believe, is next weekend, but we're not going to get that sunset till, like 7 o'clock or moving towards 8 until a little bit later. One of the things we do with our transportation coordinator, Ms. Moore, is we do ask her in her communications with school districts to make sure we're prioritizing, like say varsity events over a sub-varsity event. And that doesn't mean that we're not intending to cover the sub-varsity event. It simply means that we want to make sure that we've got the varsity events covered first, and then to see if there are situations where say like a girls freshman softball team or the boys freshman baseball team, maybe if that team is comprised of say 12 or 13 children, if it's unable to do a combo, putting both teams together, and it was only going to go out with say 12 student athletes, or if it's like the tennis team, for instance, we do look in times when we have some challenges getting a driver at the 2:30 or 3 o'clock requested departure time. There are ways we can look at using other like vans in order to be able to transport that. So we are looking, and we do ask and certainly it's not on the athletic directors. So when I say this, I don't mean to say it as to assume that it's their responsibility, but I do meet during the course of the year in my capacity with athletic directors and with league conferences in order to discuss some of the things that we can do collaboratively. Again, I understand you need a bus for an away event, and Westborough doesn't necessarily control the time of that away event, or the fields, like for most of the sub-varsity fields I know are oftentimes on town fields that are backed up to like Little League or youth softball or whatever, lacrosse trying to get on there. But we do, the most success we have is when we're being an effective communicator with the districts and asking to look at what are some of the ways that we can make sure we're adjusting that, and to be forward in that dialogue if we know that we're going to be challenged in order to honor a request to let you folks know well in advance if there's some issues. I can pause there for a second.
Dave, do you want to respond to any of that yet? Or, I mean, I could, but.
I can. Of course I can. Certainly respect that you want to run the buses as scheduled and as contracted. The complication is that the spring season is as busy as the fall. The fall's transportation cycle, when we spoke, I asked for the fall response rate. I want the same report that you did for winter so we can compare that with how many alternative plans we had to make and what kind of fragmentation we suffered. I think that I certainly acknowledge that you contracted athletics and accepted that as part of the bid. And we all know what athletics is, when it runs, and what it takes. And so, respectfully, I would say if you can't fulfill that and we can't run it, then we should pull it out of the contract or do something different. Because I think the bottom line is when kids are standing in their uniform waiting to go to a competition, it's their senior year, it's their last chance to do what they're going to do. Not getting there isn't okay. So I think we certainly know it's not your intent, but that can be the outcome and the impact, and therefore we need to solve that problem. We need to know that the bus is going to show up, and we can't get a call 20 minutes before that says that they don't have a driver, and then they're, trying to scramble. Our spring teams are a lot larger than winter teams. Winter teams, we were able to do some alternative transport. We used student drivers to swim meets. Like, we kind of abandoned some of our requests and just went to alternatives because we were really concerned about getting there. So you and I had some of this discussion. Just coming into spring, we need to know that the buses are going to be there. And if we know that drivers are on an alternative route and they're not going to be back, then obviously the contract can't be fulfilled. So we're in a catch-22 there that we need to solve, and it is 3 weeks away. So on notice that we need the contract to run as contracted.
Steve?
Yeah, I'm interested in your statement that you couldn't deliver because you couldn't get a bus to start. So what are the unique circumstances as to why that specific bus wasn't available, what about all the rest of them in New York? None of them would start?
Pete, I think I can take that for you if you're okay. If you remember the Saturday where we had the frigid temperatures, it went into -40 on Friday night into the morning, we had gelled fuel in the buses. We actually got some buses started, but they broke down along the side of the road as the fuel failed. Now, we run a winter mix of fuel. It didn't catch us off guard, but we were unable to get a number of buses started, and when we did get them started, they were on the side of the road. So we didn't want to strand children, so we did cancel some. That day warmed up very quickly, and within a few hours, the buses were running as normal. But that very early morning, around 7 o'clock, when we started to fire up the buses, we got into trouble.
Thank you.
I want to also bring up the flexibility issue that you just said in the spring. If the time that the bus is supposed to be somewhere, we shouldn't be thinking about the flexibility of the sunset. We should be saying, this is when the bus should be there. And because what I think of when I hear you say that is I think of Aratrika sitting there with the bus and who has, 3 or 4 hours of homework, and she's waiting for the bus, which makes when they get there, they'll have to stay long for their game. Then they come back and they're already late for their schedule to do whatever comes after their sports. But I'm going to bring it over to Aratrika next. Yep.
I did want to speak kind of from the student perspective as well as what some of the families have dealt with. I'm personally on the varsity swim team at Westborough High, and several of my friends are involved in different athletic programs as well. For swimming specifically, every meet is almost an away meet because we don't have a pool on campus. So our pool's at Clark. It's been at Holy Cross in previous years. Throughout the whole process, we never got to know if we had a bus or not. It would be 20 minutes after school, our coach Bethany would email us. And it makes it very difficult from a family and student standpoint to kind of organize your day around that. And following on what Lisa said, it's to push home games to a later time isn't an opportunity for a lot of Westborough students. Students here get a good amount of homework or participate in a decent amount of extracurriculars as well. Several of my teammates go back to school after practice to continue studying. So time-wise, it doesn't make sense to push that even later when students already sleep quite late, maybe later than they should be. I also wanted, if possible, to have more elaboration on the prioritization of varsity athletes over regular athletes. I don't know, I guess off the bat, I found it a little bit troubling just because, we're all representing Westborough. We all paid the same amount for our service fee for participating in the sport. So as to why varsity, why we would need to make those compromises in the contract I was just kind of wondering why that was the case.
Sure. Yeah, no, it's a great question. And I didn't mean to suggest, but I certainly understand why I may have come across that way. Didn't mean to say that a varsity athlete is more important than a freshman athlete. I just know from my experience, I was an athletic director in a past life as well as a high school principal, that sometimes there's more flexibility in rescheduling a freshman game versus a varsity game relative to some of the league schedules. So it's not a matter of I didn't mean to insinuate, and if it came across that way, I apologize, that we care more about a varsity player than a freshman player. It's just as far as creating some of the flexibility on the scheduling. But I appreciate the...
Dave? Thank
just
you.
one comment, just to kind of echo Superintendent Box and the other comments. Outside of Mr. Durrett's comments related to the bus itself, and while I'm sure the school committee wants to hear the responses to the other questions, it sounds like the focus of what we're hearing is about communication and improved communication processes from NRT to us, but also probably the critical piece is talking about the staffing issues, because that's going to essentially that is the deciding leverage factor that'll improve this across the board. So again, not to push the question and answers along, because I'm sure they want the responses. I guess one of the things that I'm curious about is being informed as to recruitment efforts, retention of the current staff, pipeline, and the process and a timeline. Maybe a communicated timeline. In a perfect world of the most appropriate individual goes for their licensure. What's the timeline from a process standpoint? What's the next process related to the driver setup through the state police or that protocol to actually take the test? And then when they actually get endorsed, because as of March 1st, I'm assuming in a perfect world, it's at least 12 weeks for someone to actually get on the road and behind the wheel.
Sure. Yeah, so I'm happy to speak to that. Certainly, again, as we're all aware, there's a national labor shortage. It has a direct impact on the transportation. It's roughly anywhere between 10 to 15% driver shortage nationwide, and that holds true in the state of Massachusetts, and it holds true in our contracts, depending upon where you're at. Now, some districts are whole. Some districts we may have, one or two driver holes where we were able to fill the routes on time, but had to do a combination or a consolidation of some of the routes. For us, we've worked, in October, and again, if I give you too much information, I apologize. I want to be respectful of time, but to answer the question, I'll work from the macro down to the micro. So in October, I was in Washington, D.C. with some other colleagues from the company, meeting with Robin Hutchinson, who is the new Director of Transportation for the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, as well as Congressman LaHoods from Illinois. He's the co-chair of the Congressional Bus Caucus. And we had meetings there. We're also a part of STAM, which is the state, the School Transportation Association of Massachusetts, that is association of all transportation vendors in the state of Massachusetts who are dealing with this. And so some of the things that we're first trying to do is to really have the federal and the state departments of transportation look at the CDL, which is the commercial driver's license regulations, because we see that, and Dave, please correct me if I'm wrong, but we see that the point of entry of a driver coming in and say, hey, I'd like to get my CDL license, and then the failure rate on that is greater than 50%. Once we get them past the permitting stage, there's still a drop off of that. So to Mr. Gordon's point, in an ideal world, typically from the moment a driver walks into our office and says, hey, I'd like to be a bus driver, if everything went perfectly, it's about an 8-week process in that situation, assuming they're not coming with a CDL license already. Now, we have contracted with a private contractor in Chelsea, and we've been able to expedite that process. I believe it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 to 4 weeks that we've been able to move that up. One of the challenges is, and at least for me, I've been with the company now for about 18 months. I was surprised to learn that both the 7D licensure up until last year, and then still the CDL license current, is not provided in any other languages other than English. A lot of our driver candidates, English is not their first language. We have hired ESL instructors in our company to help through the training process with that. We've opened a full-time recruiting center in the city of Lawrence. We're looking to see how that is. One of our other areas in Lynn has been a fairly robust recruiting center. And so in the Metro West area also, we've been a lot of recruiting efforts with open houses. We have, we work with the Registry of Motor Vehicle, the Department of Transportation, and the Department of Education as well, to try to expedite that whole process, and not just training drivers who will come drive for us, but for other transportation companies as well. There are some things, and just as an example, and again, not as an excuse, there are some things in the CDL process right now where we're specifically asking the DOT for assistance. There are some rules that are very archaic. For instance, there's an intrastate CDL requirement that requires a driver to be able to, under the hood requirements, identifying certain components that don't really apply to a driver, a school bus driver, but more to intrastate trucking. So there's a lot of things that we're asking, because if we have a group of candidates at the door, by the time they weed through the process, some of the bureaucracy and some of the legislation that exists from before, it becomes like a keyhole to move the drivers through. So it is a challenging environment, but we have been very aggressive in our recruiting, our sourcing and recruiting efforts in the Metro West area, and we will continue to do that on a daily basis. We appreciate the fact that Westborough, shares out, advertisements for drivers. We know that our greatest success in recruiting drivers is when we recruit in the local community, and so those are some of the efforts. And Dave, if you feel like I missed anything there, I don't know if that spoke, Mr. Gordon, to what you were asking specifically, but. It is an ongoing and it is an aggressive, effort that we're making to do that. Our stated goal and our budgeted goal as a company is to have 10% beyond what our staffing needs are. Now, we are currently short of that, but our budgeted goal each year is to be 10% over so that we create the type of depth and the type of bench in order to address or handle when we have call-outs, extended leave of absences, and then the lack of a bench directly impacts the effects, as the superintendent was talking about, the spring and the fall and the spring are particularly challenging on athletic events that go out right after school, because that's right at the crunch time when we're trying to get the PM routes home too. And again, I don't offer that as an excuse. We need to create the cover drivers in the bench in order to, to address that.
Right. I mean, it's a contracted dilemma. It's a dilemma for you because you don't have the staffing. A problem can be fixed, but you've got to face it as a problem and you have to fix it. Sure. I mean, if you study fast growth companies, you basically overextended and you have more contracts than you have drivers to serve, period. Like anybody in the industry looking at NRT driving for them is facing the fact that you added van pool, you expanded your contracts, you have these giant service models and not enough drivers. So at some point, bidding contracts you can't fulfill is an issue you're stuck with solving, not us. We are not in charge of solving these issues. But, you became a big beast quickly, and therefore you're stuck without drivers. You've got buses without people. You've got contracted services that you don't have people that can run them at that hour because they're doing your end of day runs. It's not my dilemma or problem to solve. So while I respect the discussion about what you're trying to do about pipeline, one of the things that would have been effective is limiting how many contracts you took. Just an opinion. But it's a pretty clear fact that if you talk to people across the industry, I'm sitting next to my friend here who lives in Framingham, and I know that case is even worse than here. So you have contracts you're not able to fulfill. One of the things we want to do tonight is just make sure we're emphasizing the quality and expectations of what it is to have a contract with Westborough. And we don't send our freshmen late. We don't we want our kids to go where they're supposed to go when they need to in order to have a quality education. And I think much of what you've done for us has gone well, and I just want to recognize that. We appreciated the new buses, a huge quality for our drivers and for our families and for our students. And I want to make sure that we maintain those quality buses available to us and they don't start disappearing. I love that the buses are properly labeled and that you're driving a Westborough bus because it says Westborough, and it's not confusing to students because there's a swap out and a cycle of bus changes that's very confusing to young riders and frustrating to parents. And when we look at what's going well, I think the next thing on our list, just to move forward, is to look at the fact that the van transportation, we contract for other vans. We know you can't give them to us. So we're looking elsewhere, and we have to get our kids places. I'll probably buy a wheelchair van next year myself, and we'll just train our paras to drive, and we'll have to transport ourselves because there's too much demand out there for the capacity tap. So, I love that you're working to fill the pipeline, but you're far from 10% over, which I'm sure you know. So, again, I think the pressures are immense for you, but they end up being your responsibility to solve because you took the contracts. So we're going to leave it squarely with you. I think one of the pieces that I recognize is I'd like to, the quality of service that you gave us for keeping buses clean, training the drivers well, those are real highlights for you. I want to compliment and call out. I'd like to transition the conversation if we could. I'm cognizant of our time tonight. I'd like to talk about the portion of the work that we discussed with regard to making sure that we have the double runs, the loops, those things I know we want to talk about. But I also think in looking at the layout of service, we need to get a continuity of arrival and information that we've found has degraded since Eric has been moved out of the job. So you had a strong person in the position in an understaffed contract, and he compensated for that by communicating really effectively. And I think you need to change your training module or return to it. And the new person that you put in place is well-intentioned and wants to be successful. I have confidence you can train that person to be successful. But currently, the communication standard is well below what we would expect. The calls are coming way too late to principals to be able to get messages to the families on the ground. The kids are already out at the bus stops. And so the window of opportunity, because the bus app isn't working effectively, because they're swapped out buses, doesn't let the parent get the information the app is supposed to give them. So these are the kind of performance indicators that you know are pieces that are in your control to fix regardless of being short drivers. So if the app is functioning well, parents know if their bus is coming late, but if you're swapping things out, it becomes complicated. So I'd like to see you helping us let the app serve us and let us serve our families better. And if there's less swapping of buses, then the app can do its job. I know one of the other pieces I want to note that I'd like you to speak to as we look at that is, you know, making sure that if Eric is still working for the company, which I realize he's doing another job, we all have multiple jobs, Eric needs to swing back and do a tighter training on the communication timelines that need to exist and what information we need. It's not useful if he calls and he doesn't say what the delay on the bus is. He's got to call earlier and say, 10 is running for 12 and it's a 15-minute delay. Then we can do our job on our end, but he's not communicating effectively yet because I think he just needs some more training. So we cover a lot of bases because we have our own transportation coordinator, but that's not an excuse for not getting him trained to the level at which he can do his end of the job. So I did want to just give a request, a very clear, concrete request, that he get another training cycle from Eric and be able to meet the standard that Eric met, because it was running much more smoothly then. So those are my notes, and I'll turn it back to you to kind of respond to those.
Yeah. I'll just speak to the transition between Eric and Paul. You know, we're celebrating Eric's promotion. He does a great job for the company and is being recognized by that and moving on. The gentleman that's taken over, so Paul came from a deep transportation background in the corporate ground transportation background, knew Westborough very well before even taking the job. So it's unusual to hire somebody into that role that has that background. So Paul is 6 to 7 weeks into his new role. He comes from an ambulance background, also geographic knowledge of the area, but not as deep as Eric, and very, very good at what he does. He has done a lot in the short time that he's there. I see the emails and I see the gap between Eric and Paul. I recognize that. I'm not defending it. We'll get Paul there, but there is a transition period. We're working through it. I don't take these comments back and work with Paul personally.
Thank you.
So what we do appreciate so often is that we meet monthly and we talk about all the issues and they get resolved. And back in January, we knew Eric would be transitioning out. And we also had 3 drivers return. And yet, as soon as there was the transition, the service declined immediately, even though we had the drivers, and suddenly there were it wasn't just double up runs, it was back-to-back runs. We've never had back-to-back runs. What does that mean? A bus driver does a complete run and goes back and does a different run after it. That has never happened before. That's like saying, well, let's make sure all our kids are 30 minutes late. That is unacceptable. And it has never been done that way. The communication has never been done this way. And And it shouldn't be our transportation coordinator telling your dispatcher how to do his job. He's supposed to be trained. And what really makes me so uncomfortable is that when you guys were bought by your company, which was Beacon Mobility, we were specifically told that this large company would not affect the feel of this person-to-person contact kind of level of service. And yet, even the way you've responded feels very much like you're saying that because it's so big, you're looking at it from a global point of view. Bring it right back down to a local point of view. And when you say 10 to 15% shortage, we never got 2 of our buses off the ground this year because there were 2 short drivers. Add the 3 that we were just talking about as 3 short, that's 5. That's over 20% shortage of drivers. So it doesn't really fit with your percentage for the national shortage. And when we talk to our neighbors, they don't have the same shortage issues that are not NRT. So it does sound as if potentially you've overbid and over-contracted. And so when we look at our contract and we look at where there are shortcomings, we see that 2 buses are short of the contractual obligation of your company. We've accepted that because we were, we understood there was a shortage, but there's no even an expected solution for that problem. Instead, we have new problems coming up. What I have appreciated is that the communication was so good from September to January that we were able to overcome those shortcomings because your company was able to actually get everyone to school, for the most part, on time, in an orderly fashion, and
Definitely, the principals said the same thing.
Unbelievable.
That through January, the service was solid enough that we could make compensations.
And then we were told the 3 drivers are coming back. We're like, we are your company said it. We are in great standing. Oh my goodness, it's going to be like the golden, ticket. And then suddenly it went downhill very, very fast. Suddenly there were buses that weren't new anymore. Suddenly there were buses that didn't say Westborough Public Schools, didn't have numbers. Suddenly there was chaos because guess what? You had created a system that works so well that as soon as you changed one thing in the system, it completely fell apart. We want that fixed. And it's contractually your obligation to fix it. And so we really just want it fixed. And we know that it's in you because we had it. We know that you guys can do this. Jackie has been exceptional. She's exceptional. She's had a team that's exceptional. And right now, there's a short end of the stick going on here. And we feel like we shouldn't have that. And why? Because we can see we don't pay him for that. And we feel like we contracted with you and we believed in you. And we've been really complimentary of NRT for quite some time. Our meeting in 2020 was the last meeting I had in person during the pandemic. We got out March 13th. We had a meet that following week, our opening meeting with your company. It was so inspiring. We were so excited because we really felt like we'd won the jackpot. And guess what? It worked pretty well. You guys were amazing during the pandemic. You had hybrid systems going and you just were clean sailing. I was amazed and we were so impressed. We talked about it often. And suddenly I feel like this is not who you are.
I do think that it's good to hear that we've had a quality and a transition, and we welcomed a transition to NRT when you won the bid. And we have seen, as Lisa said, some really nice highlights. I think one of the things that's hard for us to figure out are what are the pieces that are shifting the complexity for you, which is with Eric's transition, I can't understand a little bit, and you'll have to unpack this, so this is just something for you guys to think about. But like I can see that the communication difference, as you noted, is when you can pick up and train for him. I can't figure out, because I'm not the industry person, where the double runs and some of the other things in the looping has increased when we supposedly had drivers coming back. And that, I don't understand how Eric was managing that we didn't have that, that's changed. So I guess I would ask you to look at that because I don't understand that. So I can't, there's a piece in the puzzle for how you guys do what you do that I don't understand.
Sure.
And so I think whatever it was that kept the continuity of the buses not being swapped so much is causing fragmentation for us on the ground with the principals. So I'd appreciate it, to Lisa's point in summary, that we look at that if we could.
Yeah, I think we could definitely go back and look at that, and then in the weekly check-ins, report out.
Yeah, I think that would be good.
What the
How do we
discovery is.
unpack that and understand it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. Dave, do you have pieces you
I
want to?
think one of the, I know there was some points that we had to make. I think it's important for our community to actually get just a little insight on the van pool issue, specifically as it relates to out of district. We're struggling there, in so much so that we've actually had to use other vendors to get some of the students to and from. It may boil down to staffing or anything, but just maybe some articulation from you guys about, how those families that, when their needs come across our desk that we need to get them out of district. What's the communication method? Because at this point, there's no drivers.
For the out-of-district
For the out-of-districts under van pool.
I know, and again, I'm just sharing some of the information, but and I think in the weekly meetings, we can follow up on this.
Yeah.
Our data is showing that since the beginning of the school year, there were 9 students, and I don't know that they were all out of district, so I need to clarify this. 9 students who were added since the beginning of the year who were routed. There are 3 students that are being transported with alternative times than, again, please correct me if I'm wrong, with the initial requested time. And there's 1 student where the district noted that we haven't been providing services for, or is on a wait list, but I believe there, and I'm very well could be on our side. I think there's a gap. We didn't have that student listed as a request for transportation, so we need to go back and look and say where was that, or was that through the normal means of requesting that? But certainly happy to go back and take all of that, and in those weekly check-ins, make these agenda items.
I was gonna say, I can get you information from Karen, our kind of out-of-district coordinator, and talk about, her, not only her efforts or her information, and reconcile it with yours so we can get clear, and then we'll get some responses. But
Absolutely.
Again, it's not an understatement to say that Karen approaches my office pretty weekly about the inability to get a driver for a student that has essentially found a placement but can't get there.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think that we should sit down and go through that kid by kid, because I think there's a gap we need to understand that's different than your data.
Yeah. And listen, any student, I'm not trying to talk about a student.
Yeah, no,
as in
I
need,
appreciate
as a
that.
statistic. Certainly we want to.
Yep. And we'd love to be able to consolidate the contract as bid underneath the scope of what we anticipated getting. And right now, those 2 areas are ones that we're concerned we can't fulfill.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at the other notes. We've covered the things that we said we were going to hop through: special education, buses, the rotation of the contract for buses in terms of making sure they're properly labeled, limiting the swapping of buses. It's very disorienting when you're dismissing 900 kids at Mill Pond and you've got the loudspeaker saying 12 will go for 6 and 5 is going for 4, and it's like a bingo game for kids. And so we have kids missing buses and frustrated parents, and the app's not helping us at all with that. So there's just a logistical component to what it looks like on the ground that I think when there's that number of moves and they're increasing, it leads to losing kids. So, we just really need to be thoughtful around that complexity. Are there other pieces that we want to do tonight before we finish with
Yeah,
this?
I'd like to summarize, I guess, where we are. This has now become a circular argument. You have a contract with the school district. The contract explains what's supposed to be done, what we are paying for, and if we're not getting that level of service, then we need to have a sit-down to determine what we get for what we pay. Bottom line is, your purpose is to supply bus service to the town under the contract as it is written. And if you can't do that, then we need to do something about that and use the contract to the benefit of both of us. That's where we are. And that's where I suggest that we're going to go. We have the ability within our school district to know exactly what you're doing and what the problems are. And we can enumerate them, we can put them on a piece of paper, and we can sit down with you and ask you, what are you going to do about it? And if you can't do something about it, we will, because we have a contract that requires you to deliver the services that we bought. And I think we can wrap it up at that point.
Yeah. We look forward to using the weekly meetings as follow-up, and I think you and Dave have a strong arm of communication. And then if we can get the data on the vans and the winter and spring, the fall sports cycle, thank you. We'll look at that as well. And we'll continue our meetings. I do think that the decision on what we do for chartering for athletics is still up for discussion and will be a follow-up. I'll talk more with the board about it, but I'm not willing to face the fragmentation we did in fall and winter. So I think that we need to come up with a different solution. And so, all right, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here. You know,
Yeah.
I think we've been, you know, part of you, just so you know, we invited you because our purview is are the contracts.
Yeah.
And so that's where we're coming from. And thank you. We appreciate you coming forward and being able to answer some of our questions and be able to work with you moving forward. Thank you.
Understood. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to move right along to our next agenda item, the strategic plan update.
So
Amber?
thank you. I'm going to have Daniel open up our presentation. So I wanted tonight to bring you to, thanks, Daniel. One of the things I wanted to do is do a follow-up summation and kind of highlight to you progress on the strategic plan. And I think I presented the mid-year report to you that gave you kind of a lot of analytics. It gave you links to see things. But I think it's important to take small snippets back out and give you some highlights that give you a picture of progress on the ground. And so I did indeed use pictures, and I'm going to just take the opportunity to give you a more live picture. You guys don't get to get into buildings. You don't see what we see all the time. And I want to be able to share with you a picture of what the goal work is currently looking like. So this is just highlights on our plan work, making a focus really on more active learning, closing gaps, and connecting. Every day across this district, the amount of active, successful daily learning experiences is pretty amazing, and we don't get to talk about it often enough. Initiatives of the strategic plan and core curriculum experiences take constant maintenance and effort to improve, to grow, and to share across experiences of the district. Providing connections beyond the classroom is also a core of what is part of the Westborough experience. I want to highlight some of the major goals that are active this year. And I pulled a couple. I pulled STEAM, I pulled the literacy initiative, I pulled a snapshot on our work on math on the ground, SEL and wellness, and I'm just going to give you a picture of what we're doing so you have a snapshot. Currently, the STEAM work, as you heard in the mid-year report, there's a K-12 subcommittee working on kind of thinking about improving the coordination of the K-12 experience around maker spaces, innovative thinking, and STEAM-based focus. This is a snapshot of a Saturday. This is a Saturday robotics at the high school. There is an incredibly large, vibrant, and active on-the-ground robotics club that does amazing work for live training of our students. Up close, you see on the right there, the robot. They prep the robot to meet the requirements of the challenge of the year, and they spend extensive amounts of time working together in collaborative and problem-solving groups with up-close mentorship, all run by adults and colleagues who come in to create a vibrant learning experience around all of the types of things that these kids are passionate about. On the lower left, you see then the trajectory of that development doesn't just happen. It comes through the K-12 experience. Here you see a mill pond makerspace innovation where kids are building and problem solving using straws to hit strength and size requirements. And again, it's a smaller snapshot of some of the work that happens that lets students learn the innovations, the teamwork, the problem solving. At the same time, you see here at Gibbons, some vibrant work using the smaller robots that combine extending the school-based experience that happens during the day in their robotics work that comes as part of their core curriculum experience. And they get then an opportunity to stay and consume more time and energy around their passions. And this is a first LEGO League group that's really doing well. I also have two snapshots there of habitats that were being built. That is an example, then again, none of the robotics you see at Gibbons and the high school above just happens spontaneously. It comes through a flow of experiences of students innovating, problem solving, and learning how to do design. You see there some shelters that were designed in the makerspace at Fales, where they were studying in third grade native habitats, and the students took their research and then had a range of open-ended materials available to them and crafted through their research and inquiry a set of shelters. So again, you see a breakdown where you're looking at that trajectory of experience over time. Another major initiative that we're working on that I want to give you, I think this is a great set of snapshots. I think it's really interesting when you guys hear us talk about 3 years ago, almost 4 years ago, Daniel, I think it was, when we really looked at the literacy base related to wanting to make sure that our phonological awareness work was more systematic, was more strategic, and was more data-driven. And so Daniel worked with a large group of faculty to research what we wanted to add around the phonological awareness work and adopted some program work that now is in its second year of implementation. Very exciting to see the research, the planning, the decision-making, and the layering in of that curricular work. And now here you see in year 2, really substantial and clear shifts in instructional design. You see students working in very structured, up-close small group experiences where they're working on phonological sound symbol work that's guided and tracked and then practiced. You see them then working in partnership where they're moving through classroom experiences where they're working in partnership or independently on both open-ended practice. You see the kids using the phonemes and the little cup activity there, and then they're building words following a structure. And then you see students working in a small morning meeting segment where they've got the workbook structure that is kind of a backbone of that program. And then you see the variability of the live instruction as well. So it's not just a workbook program, but the workbook gives you a kind of a framework to play off of. And students use the work in those texts, both individually, small group, and then in these activities that follow. So that phonological work, I'm going to give you another couple snapshots on it, is continuing. And now we're looking at the data gathering, data cycles, and our goal this year is really differentiating the instruction so that it's not the same for all students. You have students that are moving more quickly phonologically, and we have data cycles that show that they're solid. They're moving into more flexible types of work. They're not having to do, like year 1, we took them all through the workbook framework. Now year 2, they might move through that more quickly, and you're seeing more diversification in what they're doing at the classroom level. That diversification is driven by data cycles, where they're collecting data on the kids' phonological awareness and work, and then modifying what they're doing. Additionally, Daniel is currently then layering that work, which was done initially first, embedded in his pre-K-12 English review. So the pre-K2 arm was done. They've continued to meet, but he's focusing now on the trajectory of English review across K-12 spectrum, and we'll be giving you a end-of-year report. That is going very well. I think I look forward to him reporting what they see as the areas where they want to enhance the next layers of their work. Additionally, here's another snapshot. The instruction in our classrooms looks substantially different. It's a real celebration to see the quality of small group, individual, and targeted instruction that students are getting around phonological work. On the right, you see an up-close guided reading group, a teacher working with 3 students at a targeted literacy level that's just right for them with direct reading instruction. You see a para working with a group of students who are then following literacy choices and are working on some work. You see another teacher working up close with students using the magnetic letters to create phonological sound and to work in their letter formation and sound symbol recognition. And then on the bottom left, you see students working independently, playing a game. So it's a rich array of really targeted work, and I think oftentimes when we bring programmatic changes to you, it's really hard to picture where does it go from there? And now you see live, this is a year 2 substantial change in the amount of work on the ground, and the data cycles are showing the proof of that instruction leading to some very good results. As students progress, the depth and quality grows. Here's a snapshot where from today, I was at Mill Pond. This is the day after a snow day and the second day back from vacation. Students dug in on really substantial literacy target goals. Students are reading themed texts across multiple authors. They're in just right texts. They're getting up close one-to-one instruction with a teacher on their literacy understanding and work. They're using small group independent work and independent reading around themes, texts they're working on together, and they're also able to do individual work where they have targeted writing work that follows their reading. So the student, I was in this classroom today, the young student who's reading her book and she's working on her iPad at the same time, has a really structured framework on Google Classroom where she opens it up, and I caught the mini lesson where they were talking about the character and theme analysis work that they were supposed to take from their individual book and fold into the assessment. On the right, you see a student who's doing an inquiry-based literacy and social studies integration related to Tutankhamun and looking at the study of some comparative literature. Really good quality, depth of work, and differentiated at a high level. Those are literacy goals we feel really good about that are in active year 2 and ongoing growth. They're impacted by the UDL work, but also by the targeted literacy work, and those two kind of interface nicely together. One of the other major areas where I wanted to give you a broader snapshot of our work since the mid-year report, the composting to date, we have collected over 12 tons of food waste that is not being then put into landfills. That food waste doesn't break down to methane then, it doesn't take up space where we need landfill available, and that compost doesn't go to waste. So we are making progress. We're continuing to gather data. We need to continue training. It's fragile in some school settings and really getting good traction in others. That's understandable. It's a year 1 goal. We want to explore composting at the building level for several of our gardens. We can purchase at a reduced cost black earth, soil, or compost. It's not like a freebie where they just rotate it back to us, but we can certainly target negotiating with them, but we can get back compost that comes from what we've contributed. We will use this year to assess how it went, what the cost analysis was against its value, and make some decisions about how we feel about continuing that work. Secondarily, recycling, improving the work we're doing with the single stream recycling has needed a lot of retraining. We see a lot of corruption of bins where students or faculty are just corrupting the recycle bin, and therefore it doesn't get fed into the single stream available. So we're looking at needing to do a better job. Again, this is a year one of kind of re-clarifying this initiative. I have a sample there for you of a more strategic, organized waste design where you've got clearly marked bins pooled together so that people aren't standing there with two things they want to throw away. And if there's one bin, guess what they're going to do? They just put it in the bin and move on. They don't have time to sit there and figure that out. So if you want a separation of those waste streams, you need to provide an example that lets people make good decision making. So this is actually up at the Y where I work out, and I like their design. I've asked Kelly to start her research and give me a better quality of choice for the cycle of bins and what it would take for us to price out a better continuity of how we're stationing those, collecting them, and implementing our plan. All very typical year one goal, work. Also want to show that, again, the gardening is overlapping to the composting in ways that we feel really good about. I had a meeting today with a group of students at the high school who are interested in reactivating the greenhouse that's there. There's a greenhouse, did you know that? And they also are interested in designing some raised beds as an integrated engineering and tech project, and so, good things going on. Lastly, you see then there's this curriculum arm that needs to develop, and at Mill Pond, this was related to their climate action goal, looking at the planet and thinking about how do you protect watersheds. So again, you look at the water cycle, you look at watershed, and you help to plug it into understanding it in a climate action lens. All of this leads to an education framework that lifts our work around sustainability. I feel good about where we are. There's lots of work to do here. One of the things that I have received some pushback on from people is just around the cost analysis of this. I don't say it's extensive, but I think it's a piece the school committee will need to look at and be clear in your values articulation that the cost of adding, say, Black Earth is a choice you make that is part of our sustainability goal. Currently, Harvey's doesn't offer a separate large opportunity for us to do composting with them. So there was, I've received, I think, 2 emails, so it's not extensive, but some questions about why are we paying for Black Earth when we could just use Harvey's? And so I've certainly articulated the goal as we've started it, but certainly something that we'll need to grapple with.
Okay.
Yep.
So the cost analysis for any program like this won't look good for year one.
Yes.
So you should give it some time.
I appreciate you saying that. It's a good thing you'll be here to sit out there and tell us that. You can send an email to me as a resident now and voice your support. There's a lot of work around this to be done. And one of the next pieces as you look at that is setting up the Green Task Force, which would meet 4 or 5 times a year with a cross grade level, cross adult and student team to come together to help us get better traction around this stuff so that they can vary it based upon the schools and the areas of interest. Let's look at UDL, a major professional development initiative for us this year. Again, looking at how we teach students to provide the best match and quality of access to instruction for every learner. We have good professional development coming up next week. There's a snapshot of one of the grids that went out where teachers were making choices, working independently and in small group in our last PD day. It's a very well-run quality experience for our teachers this year. And you're starting to see this variability of student choice, more flexible learning environments, and more entry areas into learning are the areas where I think some of the traction around UDL is starting to show up in the classroom. Again, very new for us. I love the, some of it's small stuff, but I think it's just very interesting to see the kids in the laundry baskets. Like we talk about isn't it hilarious? It's just like creating learning environments that are responsive responsive to the different ways that students want to find comfort, gain access, and be able to dig into traction in their learning. And there's something that some of the kids love about feeling tucked in there, and they just like to sit in it and feel contained and kind of both with someone but in their own space. And it's just, that's over at Armstrong's Library. It's just very charming. Also with the UDL, and this is again a snapshot of a 6th grade open-ended inquiry around the human body, where they take open inquiry questions and they just go to the depth of their knowledge and interest working in teams. And they added this unit about 3 years ago and opened it up so that it was a more vibrant, inquiry-based, really wide open for students to use diagramming and research and to work in teams or individually to just go to the depth they were able to chase. And the vibrancy of that unit continues to get really, really more and more interesting. And then there's 2 snapshots there for you of classroom work where you have students setting their own targeted goals for things they can't do yet, but want to be able to do in the future. That's in a 2nd grade classroom. And then in a 6th grade classroom today, a targeted set of very clear delineation of how we're going to tackle this learning. And you see when you get to the bottom, when they get to the independent, they can be working with self, in group, or with support. So you're starting to see that kind of targeted mobility to the way they're providing instruction. And then below there at Hastings, you see an inquiry-based project presentation. I think that's a 2nd grade, doing some work to present their projects. And you can see it's kind of a classic project board where they've done research. So just a rich array of things going on across the schools. And it grows over time. Here's a bit of a snapshot of math. On the right, you have elementary. You have kids working in groups and teams, a lot of hands-on stuff, a lot of partner work, and a lot of teacher support. And then on the left, you have Donna Avery's math class. And if you want to see an example of a really amazing, dynamic, active learning environment, she's got her learning targets there for what they need to tackle, and then she breaks them out in these random groups, and they work standing in these open problem solving sets, and she's moving around, checking on them, answering questions. It's pretty cool to see the evolution of her classroom to create multiple layers of entry and pacing for students. And oftentimes you might have students really working problems like this, and she has variability for level of entry on them. And she's often maybe will pull a student and do a one-to-one piece. But it means when she's got other paraeducators or teachers embedded in her classroom, they have easy access to these kids to do teachable moments. So where she might have in the past done that work at the board and they would have all done it at the same time, by breaking it apart like this, she unlocks the capacity for kids to move at different pace, to take more responsibility for their learning, and it accesses the ability for other faculty to work with kids in flexible settings. So if I am visiting this class, I can add into a group and I can start asking them questions. So the vibrancy of just the flexibility of her design has completely changed the layout of her classroom. That's an example of a master teacher who's thinking toward best practice and growing her classroom and being flexible to really break up the way she's providing instruction and to grow it. And what was very exciting was I went into another classroom before vacation and found a variability of this model. And she's like, yeah, I stole this from Donna. And I was like, I love that. That's exactly what we want. So you're seeing kind of that energy around recognizing when you create these flexible environments, students are thriving in ways that's really exciting to see. I just want to give a quick snapshot. You can read this, it's in your packet. Our fine arts program is responding and recovering nicely. We had 2 years where we lost numbers, and we were really worried about that. If you didn't pick up an instrument in 3rd grade, you might never pick up an instrument, and some of those groups are moving through smaller, and we're starting to see a spring back both of our performance level, being as strong as it was. We're kind of back to kind of, not that it's about rewards and accolades, but we're performing really well, and our kids are doing a beautiful job. We are a district that, like, we graduate a lot of kids who go into voice and theater and arts. It's pretty impressive. We have people making films now. It's all part of this arm of this work, which is very cool and has really come back at a nice level. We also continue to look at fun and culture. And around fun and culture, we talk about social emotional learning and wellness, and what it takes to create a district where you have layers and layers and layers and layers of little things you do that create the energy of a safe, loving, caring environment. And so you have staff willing to put in the time and energy to do field days and special weeks and vibrant teaching. You have the layers of helping students think actively in proactive ways about how to be kind and how to live in a culture where you respect and support your students, but you also support everyone who works around you. And you see that with the thank you to the custodians, and then you see these caught being kind where kids are highlighting the great things they see each other do. And then you see Peter Gelnitz today because it's March Madness, and he does come to provide an energy to that work. And when he and I were walking around today, he started gaming with a student, and we spent some time just doing a morning warm-up for the student before they headed out to their schedule. It was a lot of fun. And I use the word fun purposely because it's important that fun be embedded in rigorous and important learning and in personal relationship work. Lots of fun and flexibility going on here. Our kids have lots of opportunities during the day to connect, to work in different groups, to do community service drives. It's just all a part of the vibrant life of the schools. And we really try to make sure that our students get those experiences. Just a little more life for you in the work of the district. There you see middle schoolers at lunch. Nothing like being a middle schooler. They are a great group. You have the ski team that today competed in the state tournament, and there they are. They had a great day. I don't know how it all came out, but they did really well. And there's Brooke there, I just want to say. You had Marianne Stannard and I today that had an opportunity to skate in a classroom. They were playing the skaters waltz, and everyone was on paper plates, and they were skating around the classroom. It was so much fun. And Marianne hopped in and was skating, and the kids were waltzing around the music room on paper plates. It was hilarious and fun, and they were working on rhythm and joy and love of music, just really great. And then you see just kids doing what kids do, making friends and having fun. So I think it's important to give you a picture of what we live with every day and to have a chance for you to see what it looks like for curriculum goals that you've voted and supported in reviews to continue to come to fruition, and then to see the strong work of the staff on the ground to provide daily experiences for our students, both in clubs and in connection and in academics, such that, their school day is meaningful. So that was the update I wanted to provide for you. I hope it gives you a bigger picture of what it feels like beyond just the mid-year report, which was a little dry. So I thought the pictures would give you some progress reports that are a little more vibrant. So that's my strategic plan update on the ground today. So
I so appreciate this, and I hope that this helps give everyone an insight into what education is like today. It's very different than from when we went to school. So just because you went to school doesn't mean you know what's happening in the schools today. And this just gives a really great picture for all the opportunities that our students are afforded here in Westborough. So thank you.
I also want to say, from a student standpoint, even the experiences at Mill Pond or at Fales and Gibbons, stick with us. I still remember my first Purple Day at Hastings. I still remember going buggy. I still remember all of those events, as silly as they might have been or seemed at the time. It's something that has led even all the way to the high school to kind of have those experiences, getting involved in in school committee and doing things at the high school. I attribute that to experiences back as far as Mr. Gilday's 5th grade class or Mr. Paulus at Gibbons. Having that kind of interactive classroom has, I think, what sets Westborough apart a lot of the times. We have some substitute teachers that have worked previously in different districts, and they're kind of surprised. You all say thank you after class. You all know the names of all of your custodians and your bus drivers, and it's just something that's super unique to Westborough that I think is really cool.
Thank you. And it takes the maintenance of effort of all of us really taking that culture really seriously and keeping it healthy. And so I just wanted to give you a snapshot tonight.
Fantastic. Thank you. So we'll move right along to, do we have a budget town
So the
meeting
only,
update?
I can help you catch up time here. So the budget, as of now, the warrant closed last night. Our warrant articles didn't need any additional changes. We are waiting, as Steve already provided the update for the bid to come in for Hastings on the 20th, and that will give us the dollar amount to fold into that particular warrant article in the capital, and we should be in good shape for that.
Okay.
Other than that, I will start preparing with Dave, and I will work on the presentations. I don't know who will want us back again. I'm looking at Michael to see if we need to go back. Typically in the next couple of weeks, we might have other follow-up questions. The select board closed the warrant without asking us to come back. I'm hopeful that that's a very good sign that they're feeling good about where we are. I do want to say that it looks like in the governor's budget that the Chapter 70 was going to be funded, it looked like, if it moves through, at almost 10%. And I know that that would be a meaningful increase at the town level for Chapter 70. I think Christie carried it at a 2% increase. And that would mean that there would be additional funding that would be coming in on Chapter 70 for budget offset in the design of the funding. That always comes in later, but by the time they set the tax rate in the fall, that number would have an impact, hopefully, to provide some improvement, and it should be several $100,000. It's
I have to look at I'm sorry. I have to look at the exact math. I haven't done that today.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a significant number, and
Well, we bring almost $12 million in Chapter 70.
Yes.
So if it goes up by 10%, that would be helpful.
yeah, and there's a discussion with the town related to. There's various views as to what the Chapter 70 funding impact is and how that actually should get distributed, but with the collaboration of the town, we'll kind of figure out the best use of those excessive dollars and go forward and brief you once we.
Is 10% confirmed?
We'll see. She shows it at 9.8. I think it'll be interesting to see. I mean, in the draft I saw that came out for public consumption, and now it has, how it has to move through multiple iterations. But I think that they're looking for ways to move some of that funding access they've had out into the field. And so I think it'll be interesting to see, I think it'll hold. We'll wait and see. I mean, how do they fund one thing at approval for a 14% increase at the time, across some of these costs, and then not show some good faith? If they were really going to put their money where their mouth is, they would raise circuit breaker, because that's the direct funding mechanism that would directly offset that 14% increase.
That's where 14% increase.
And, that would have to be extraordinary relief, one-time funding that they would provide. I don't see any indication on that, and they noted that it didn't show circuit breaker in their numbers. So we don't need to go further tonight. I know we're timing-wise, we're off, and I want to move us
That's okay.
forward. But I just want to indicate, I think we're in good shape.
Yeah.
We'll start our presentations, we'll wait on the Hastings number, and then you know what it looks like. The complexity we always have to remember is you have two members rotating off. So on the 15th, we're going to have two new members, and it's literally a week before we go to town meeting. So I think the complexities of that will be important to just pace ourselves on. And make sure that we balance out planning to back up article discussion and things like that. So that's it for tonight, I think.
So the next thing on the agenda was the emergency shelter update.
So I'm going to give you a synopsis verbally, and again, it's not worth putting in writing yet. I mean, I think it's a lot of moving targets. I think it's important to keep you updated. You've seen public release of information. The state will, DHCD, which is the housing Authority will develop the Sharp building. Their target goal is May to move what they say will be 20 families into one floor of occupancy there. The building has a capacity for many more families. They've indicated that their target is 20. Currently, Westborough has 3 extended stay hotels also at play. They have multiple families that have come in, some refugees, mostly homeless families who have been displaced from other rentals. And they are now in those 3 settings. We currently have 16 students that came from that base of hotels, and we will get the 20 that will go into the Sharp building. They're indicating, and I have been forceful in my feelings, that they should be backfilling the Sharp with the families that are in the hotels. Now, they have indicated that they plan on moving those families out of the hotels, because they don't like to use hotels, over into the stabilized, more permanent housing that would be available while they then work to transition those families to more permanent residencies. Those families each have a choice to go to their home of origin, Waltham, Boston. We got a message yesterday that we have 3 students that will transport to Boston that are opting to stay in Boston, and we will share the transportation cost on that. We will get some state reimbursement for that, but it's just a very complex set of layers. A student, and people might get tired of trying to do that and opt to enroll in the district. That's always a choice for them while they're housed here. And then they're often getting placed into permanent housing in other places, and they will opt to stay with us through school through the end of the year. So it's a really complex issue. The request I have made is, fine, give us those 20 families, we'll work with you, we'll stabilize what we can do, we know what we're doing. Don't backfill the hotels. They indicate currently that they are using 16 hotels in community locations. We have 3 of them. I'm like, that's 18% of your total. That is an over delineation of a small community, and you're overloading us. So I've been clear that we're very comfortable, families that need to come, that are homeless, that need to be with us and be schooled. But it needs to be proportionality and with a formula across their Commonwealth. And that's where I'm pushing on Kate Donahue, Hannah Kane, and asking them to step up. They have stepped up and asked for funding, but funding doesn't solve the problem of space, busing, and the complexities of what it brings to the district in terms of workload. So that's a complex moving target. We're having these meetings with a team of people. There are a lot of players at the meeting. They haven't coordinated themselves yet. They were not prepared for scalability of magnitude, and they have not recovered. They're working at it, but I'm in these meetings where they don't have their data spreadsheets clear. They are using multiple subcontractors to move these families around. We're dealing with SMOC, which does a lot of the placements of families with children. So my note to you is that as of now, May will bring us potentially 20 new families, and in a best case scenario, I'm hoping that they're moving them from the hotels and that our number won't change. They will not give us a guarantee that they are not going to backfill those hotels as well. So I think if there's a job to be done, it is for the school committee to send clear communication to our representatives that they expect an appropriate proportionality of weight in our community, and that they need the hotels offloaded so that they can return to business coverage, which is what their design was for. You just heard Raghu speak about leveraging more businesses. Those extended stays are designed for business travel, people coming in, and if they're full of people that need homeless placement, they don't set up as good, viable short-term assessment spaces for business people. So those are the areas where I think you should consider a letter and presenting something to Hannah and Kate.
Do we have a volunteer to write that letter? Thank you so much. I couldn't help but just stare at you
I
until
can
you
draft.
volunteered.
If you draft something, you can look at it with me, and then we could run it through the committee. I have sent already, I am emailing and following up, but I'm, one voice. I think they want to be responsive, but I think, they need direction as well for what, and I think we need to partner with Christy, who has done a very good job to push them. I think we should work with the select board. I think we need to make sure that Westborough gets the appropriate proportional responsibility and warmly welcome families who need our support. I am happy to have any family they bring us. I want to know that the percentage is shared, because it is a complexity that has a lot of impact.
Apart from our representatives, can we send the letter directly to DHCD?
We can send it to them as well. I mean, we definitely, if we craft a communication, I think that Christy would be able to ask the board to do some work with us on that, because I think it's an important part of what we need to do. Just to keep them present in the responsibilities of what the state is doing. And currently, Hannah and Kate are attending the meetings, so they're seeing some of the internalized disorganization. I followed up with emails to Kate and Hannah. So I just want to keep you in the loop, and I'll, share more information as I get it.
I think we have a thought here. Steve, direct?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things about this whole process is there's dynamic at the state level as to what they really are trying to do. And, I think we need to know that to be able to advise Kate and Hannah what we can do within that dynamic. Because, we basically would be, whistling in the wind if we don't have a good idea of what they can do and what they can't. And so, it's a whole collection of things of how many people they're talking about, what kind of money is being offered, and all the other things that you put on the table. But I think in order to have some effectiveness in this game plan of discussion, we really need to know who the players are, where the emphasis is coming from, and what Kate and Hannah can do for us.
I certainly can collaborate with you on giving you information to plug in. I think one of the points to make with Hannah and Kate is they don't have a plan that's clear, which is one of the problematic pieces in my mind, is that they have a lot of moving pieces in a crisis, and they're kind of just going where they think they can go. And, I think we need to stand our ground that has an impact that they're not really willing to hear. And we were clear that, our food pantry is a volunteer organization. If you place somebody in a community where they have I've worked in places where there's a funded community food bank that's owned and managed by the state or the town, and we don't have that infrastructure. And so, they're making promises I think they can't fulfill, and let alone the fact that the busing arm is, welcome to the circle back of that discussion. So there's just things we have to figure out. And I'm certain, and I will work with Steve on organizing a message that we can send that you feel gets that kind of concrete backup that,
Certainly, I think, we as the school committee have a role here, but I think we also need to sit down with all the players in the town on our side of the fence, understand where people have leverage, and then see what we can do with it.
Yeah.
Because, just saying, well, we don't want it, and it's too many people, and this and that, and we don't have the money, and these are all the consequences. Well, we make them aware of it, but they'll do what the hell they're going to do anyway.
Right. They're gonna renovate the Sharp building, and we're getting it.
Yeah.
I think a clear ask is don't backfill the hotels then.
Right.
We need to clarify, and they do have the power to make that decision. But right now, those extended stays are seeing that they've got a money cow, a cash cow that is working really well for them. They've all said, sure, we'll sign up. If a community has an extended stay, but they're opting not to participate, that doesn't just mean because our extended stays are that we want that to be happening. So I agree with you, it's complex.
Yeah.
I'm embedded in it, and it's frustrating. And it's beginning to crystallize. And this is the first time that I could give you at least an update on some numbers and some planning. But to say it's frustrating is an understatement.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Oh.
I was just gonna say, if I don't have the date right, May 4th was the MASC Day on the Hill event.
Oh, yes.
I was gonna say that might be like a good opportunity to like, because you'll be like able to talk to them in person and everything. And I was gonna say looping in Senator Michael Moore might be helpful as well.
Yes.
Yep, he attended one of the meetings, and I think he's sending a rep. Like, they understand this is an impact, and I think they're trying to figure out as well. But thank you, Artrika, I agree.
And each of our members are welcome to actually reach out to any of those representatives and senator at our own leisure. Like, that is okay to call them up and literally just have a conversation, which we all can and will do. So thank you for that update. It certainly impacts our town, it impacts our schools, and it impacts our budget. So let's move on. The next, just an announcement that the next regular session meeting of the school committee is scheduled for Wednesday, March 15th, 2023. We will have 2 new members who will need to be sworn in before that meeting, and we will then vote, not we, they will vote for a new chairperson and organize any committee moves. Up for bids on the committees, no, I'm just kidding.
We'll deal with that.
You'll deal with it. So we have a motion to move into executive session?
Sure, I can make a motion that we vote to meet in executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining, as a discussion in open meeting would have a detrimental effect, with school contracts dealing with school administrators, the teachers, tutors, paraeducators, custodial employees, food service employees, and administrative assistants. And under Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A7, to review and approve executive session minutes from February 15th, 2023.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Excellent. We have a roll call vote, the last one that I'm going to call.
Yes?
Vincent, yes.
Edinburgh, yes?
Nandan, yes?
Brett, yes.
And we are in executive session.